Have you ever stared into her eyes and felt a storm you couldn't name? A sweetness that dissolved your sense of caution? A glance that made you forget the sharpness of your own instincts? Brother, this isn't mere poetry. This is architecture. There exists a domain of wisdom that modern man has abandoned, not because it's untrue, but because it demands too much to truly understand. Socrates didn't flee from this knowledge. He walked right into it. And what he found wasn't disdain for women, but a piercing truth about them that still echoes in the spirit of man. He did not speak with resentment, but with flame-hardened logic. Where men are shaped by clarity, women are formed through layers of illusion. He didn't say this to insult. He said it to awaken. Because what is hidden must never be trusted blindly, and what enchants must first be studied, or it will consume you. The men of Athens mocked him. Their jurors condemned him, but Socrates smiled in the face of their dismissal, because he knew. A man who sees only how a woman looks and not how she moves beneath that surface is like a warrior enchanted by the shimmer of his opponent's blade. All beauty, no mercy. Socrates taught by asking questions. So ask yourself, why does she crave influence from the shadows? Why is her affection often braided with intention? Why does her silence speak louder than her declarations? If you don't question, you won't perceive. And if you can't perceive, you will kneel, not out of loyalty, but illusion. In the Republic, Socrates described the just soul, balanced, ruled by thought, not enslaved by craving or reaction. But what of the man who builds his life around a woman whose essence he's never understood? That man isn't building a soul. He's constructing a monument to confusion. He spoke of the tyrant soul, one ruled by yearning, always hungry, never grounded. Gentlemen, how many of you wear the mask of logic, but are secretly chained by the hunger for female approval? How many construct empires, not for principle, but to impress a woman who will vanish the moment your walls crumble? Understand, Socrates wasn't warning you about her. He was warning you about yourself. Because when you don't understand her nature, she isn't your enemy. She isn't your savior. She's the test. And every man must face it, or be crushed beneath the weight of his fantasies. You were taught to chase beauty, but Socrates knew beauty is the bait. What truly matters is the purpose behind it. And here, this is where men fall. You chase the body. You ignore the blueprint. You chase her warmth. You overlook her cycles. You do not learn. You plunge. And when you fall, she doesn't catch you. Not because she's heartless, because nature didn't make her to. But above all, let her remain herself. And you? You must remain sovereign, because if she becomes your source, she also becomes your weakness. And when that source runs dry, as all illusions eventually do, you are left not just broken, but disoriented. You were never supposed to orbit her. You were designed to orbit truth, purpose, and principle. She was meant to witness that orbit, not command it. Socrates would not plead for you to avoid love. He would beg you to confront it with wisdom, to ask what lies beneath the surface, to study her, not to control her, but to calibrate yourself. A man unexamined becomes prey, not just to her charm, but to his own cravings disguised as romance. He chases softness, yet forgets the steel he must wield to hold his direction. She admires clarity, not chaos, firmness, not flattery, presence, not performance. And when you possess these, not in acts but in essence, she sees you, not the boy in search of motherly praise, but the man who has become his own master. Power begins when you no longer need to be needed, when you build without begging, when you cherish but do not cling. A woman respects what is rooted, and your roots cannot be her approval, her body, or her whims. They must be deeper, planted in your character, your discipline, your purpose. This is what Socrates whispers through time, not as condemnation, but as revelation. You do not fail by loving her. You fail by forgetting yourself in the process. She cannot complete you, nor should she. That burden of wholeness was always yours to carry. The myth that she will heal your ache, validate your struggle, or rescue you from insignificance, it's just that, a myth. Romantic, yes, but also paralyzing. You are not a soul in search of a half. You are a soul in need of remembering itself. And once remembered, the woman beside you does not become your salvation, but your mirror. She reflects your stillness, or your noise, your depth, or your distraction, your sovereignty, or your surrender to impulse. That is why Socrates warns, not of her, but of your blindness. A man without awareness walks into love like a child into battle, hopeful, fragile, and utterly unarmed. But a man with discernment? He walks in whole and chooses, not clutches. He does not confuse her admiration for his identity. He does not mistake chemistry for compatibility. He does not call possession love, and if he must leave, he leaves without collapsing. Because he never made her his spine in the first place. Love is not the battlefield. Illusion is. And so remember this, if you lose yourself in her, it was never love. It was escape. A sacred woman will not tolerate your abdication. She will not be flattered by your worship, nor softened by your self-betrayal. She does not want to be your purpose. She wants to witness your purpose, to feel it in the quiet of your presence, to be moved by how immovable you are. The masculine that bends for approval becomes invisible to her. The one that stands, rooted in truth, becomes unforgettable. Do not fear losing her. Fear losing yourself while trying to keep her. This is not cynicism. This is clarity. This is not bitterness. This is sovereignty. Love her deeply, fully, bravely, but never abandon your post. Never yield the temple of your becoming to the tides of desire or the storms of rejection. She may walk beside you, but only you can walk the path. To soothe, to appeal, to adjust, and in doing so, it silently commands you to abandon the single law etched into your very essence. Do not bend unless bending is your true desire. Because once you start to fold just to earn her affection, you will fold again and again and again until nothing remains of the man you were, only the shadow of a memory. There is no balance where self-abandonment is the cost of love. There is no real intimacy without the foundation of inner truth. Do you want to know the kind of man a woman can't walk away from? It's not the wealthiest, not the most physically striking, not even the most romantic. It's the man who can walk away and still remain whole. Because the moment she feels you cannot walk, the moment your essence is tethered to her presence, the moment your flame flickers, the instant she steps away, she knows your fire is no longer real. You are no longer heat. You are a candle, delicate, vulnerable, and forgettable. But the man who stands firm, the one who keeps smiling through silence, who stays focused on his purpose, regardless of her storms, that man becomes gravity. And even if she runs, she cannot help but feel his pull. Socrates understood this. He lived it. While others argued in pursuit of applause, he dissolved illusions. While the world played games, he aligned with eternal truth. And there is no truth more certain than this. A man's foundation must never be shaken by the approval of others, especially not by the woman he longs for. She will test your depths, not to destroy you, but to locate you. When she raises her tone, do you collapse? When she withholds affection, do you crawl? When she threatens to leave, do you lose your vision? These are not fights. These are spiritual audits. And each time you fail, she loses belief. Not because you're unlovable, but because you've shown her your throne is made of dust. She cannot trust a man who needs her more than he needs his soul. You think the ache is a sentence, but the ache is an awakening, an invitation to rise, to sharpen, to evolve into the kind of man who can love without vanishing, who can lead without suppressing, who can feel without losing himself. This isn't emotionlessness. This is sovereignty. This is masculinity stripped of craving. This is the essence of Socrates, still strong and beyond manipulation. And that, my brother, is where true love begins, the kind that doesn't enslave. You were not made to crawl before affection. You were born to guard the gates of wisdom with your entire being. Socrates didn't teach this with slogans. He taught it with sacrifice. In the end, he chose death over disgrace, stillness over surrender, and truth over comfort. And what is that truth for you right now? It is this. You must never dread her nature, nor attempt to reshape it. You must refine your own nature. She is not the battlefield. She is the mirror. She is the tension, the trial, the sacred friction that exposes your hidden fractures. Most men falter not because they're weak, but because no one ever told them the feminine isn't here to complete you. She's here to challenge you. And if you accept that, she transforms into the forge. If you resist it, she becomes the fire that devours. Do not beg her to be gentler. Grow wiser. Do not plead for her to stay. Become the man she refuses to leave. Do not look to her for healing. Heal yourself so completely that your scars become scripture. Socrates issued no commands. He offered questions. Questions so sharp they cut through the fog. Questions that awaken the soul, that tear away every disguise you've ever worn. And if you dare to walk that path, yes, you will lose things. Illusions, addictions, false entitlements. But what you gain is everything. You gain clarity, that rarest of gifts in a world drowning in noise. You gain calm, the kind of unshaken stillness no one can manipulate. You gain power, not over others, but over your own spirit. And in mastering yourself, you have already conquered the world. Let them label you cold. Let them whisper you're too rational, too distant, too composed. These are the cries of a culture that fears men who cannot be moved. Because such men do not obey trends. They do not crumble for attention. They do not barter their integrity for a touch or a glance. They stand, not because standing is easy, but because falling is no longer on the table. And when you stand like that, you become a signal. Other men will witness you and remember who they were meant to become. That ripple will echo farther than you'll ever know. So to you, the man watching, listening in silence, feeling that old ache only the wise carry, I say this: rise. Rise without rage. Rise without apology. Rise without hesitation. Not to war with her, but to honor yourself. Do not fear her tests. Do not envy her strength. Just meet it with something even greater. Your own indestructible core. And when you do, the game ends. The illusions shatter. The soul begins its ascent. This message is not for everyone. It is for the few, the seekers, the architects, the uncrowned kings who have not forgotten the fire. If you felt the burn in these words, share them. Let them ripple. Subscribe, comment, not to uplift me, but to uplift the truth. Because there are men starving for it, and if you've been fed, feed others. Let this be the start of your return, not to dominance, but to discernment. The world doesn't need louder men. It needs clearer ones. Be that man, and walk forward, unshaken. Thank you for listening.